It's Sunday. It's cold. Um, hey, time for another vlog. I'm just going to get one or two things out of the way first. A few questions from my previous vlog on scanning with the 850. One person says I calibrated my Epson V850, but it still needs tons of sharpness to get the same result as a paper print with my enlarger. Yeah, the V850 scans very flat. Your images will be flat, and when you look at them, they do appear a little bit soft. I always find once I've gone into Lightroom and I've massaged them to where I want them, to the right contrast and sharpness, I normally go over to Photoshop to sort out the sharpness. But by the time I've done that, the images look a lot sharper. I don't use a huge amount of sharpness. The contrast, together with a little bit of careful sharpening, normally produces a very good sharp image. So you've got to, I don't think I've ever scanned an image and thought straight away, that looks great. It always needs a little bit of upping and massaging and dodging and burning and that kind of stuff. But by the time I've finished it and by the time I've exported it, it looks sharp and just as I want it. So, so be mindful of that. I mentioned the Imicon Hasselblad Flex scanners. You say they're £20,000 nowadays. I wasn't suggesting you buy one, but there are normally places up and down the country, certainly in this country, in the UK, that enable you. They'll hire it out for an afternoon. I thought I made that clear, but maybe I didn't. That was my intention anyway. They'll normally hire it out for however long you want. Obviously, it depends where you live. Yeah, they are extremely expensive, and they've gone up even more because they're not being made anymore, but they're still extremely good scanners. And then somebody else says thanks very much, and then somebody else, what film do you use? Simple answer is Ilford, Delta, or HP5. Delta's a bit more expensive than HP5. I have used, I will say, point blank, without hesitation, I don't mind using any one of four films. They're all 400. HP5, Ilford Delta, T-Max, Kodak T-Max, and Tri-X. I will say HP5 is normally my stock go-to film. Kodak's just twice the price now, so I don't see the point. It's not a better film. If it were twice the price and a better film, that would be different, but it's not a better film. They're all much of a muchness. I know people have, swear by a certain film stock. Yeah, yada yada yada. I've always used HP5. I've used Tri-X and T-Max in the day. They're both beautiful films, but that was back in the days where they were all pretty much the same price. They're not anymore. Kodak are just crazy prices, so I don't use them anymore. Simple as that. If they were all the same price and I walked into a shop and there were all four films were available, I would buy HP5 Plus. That's what I'd buy. By choice, not dictated by price, just by choice. But if HP5 wasn't in stock, I'd probably go to Delta. And if that wasn't in stock, then yeah, I'm more than happy with T-Max. And and Triax, certainly, certainly Triax. Um, I won't go to any other films, not because, you can get some good deals on other manufacturers' films, but I don't know how they respond to my way of developing. I just don't know, and I'm not prepared to. I'm not prepared to go there because I know that any one of 4 films will work, or any one of 2 films will work. I don't tend to run out. I've got a batch of 40 films at the moment, plus a 50 feet of film that I can load myself. So, I've always got a good stock of film, so I don't sort of find myself in a position where, oh, HP5 isn't in at the moment. I will say that another reason why I use HP5 is that it tends to be pretty ubiquitous. It seems to be the film that's most in stock in most places. I found anyway. It obviously depends on the part of the world that you live, but yeah. Anyway, yeah, that's the film that I use. So today, what are we talking about? Learning from your mistakes. I think it was Christopher Isherwood that said we don't learn by our mistakes, we just make bigger and bigger mistakes as we get older, or something along those lines. But what I've done is I've pulled out a series of about 30 images of some of the earliest images that I shot. And I think it's a pretty good idea to do that, to go back and see the kind of thing that you were shooting back then, work out if there is any kind of correlation between what you shot back then. I personally have a bit of a story with that, but see the mistakes you were making, I think, is a really good way to see or to track your development and to track how you evolved. So, for example, I went to college, and I quickly, I found out fairly soon, having started college, that they wanted to turn you into a commercial photographer, so studio based, flash Elinchrom lighting and all that kind of stuff. And look, I'm not saying it was a waste of time, far from it. I did learn all sorts of things, but I also realized maybe this wasn't quite the right course for me. But it was difficult because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I just knew that I loved photography and I was passionate about it. And sometimes you've got to do things to work out what it is that you don't want to do. And the more studio stuff I did, stuff that they wanted me to do, the more, I would just kind of, I realized I kept on going back to street. The penny was beginning to drop, and sort of studio stuff was beginning to make my skin crawl a little bit. And it was the antithesis of what I wanted to do, from this kind of controlled lighting setup, tripod and a medium format camera, to something as visceral and real as street photography. I think I probably needed to do that. I needed to, I kind of wanted to learn studio stuff, but the more I did it, the more I realized it wasn't for me. I did learn from it, but it just was not me ultimately. And you have to do those things to realize that sometimes. So I thought I'd take you through some of these images and show you my mistakes. Mistakes. Yeah, definitely mistakes. you know, I can see a real naivety of the way I was seeing back then. But that's okay, you know. It's not like I have delusions of being a great photographer back then or anything. Let's do a little screen video and go through some of these images if I can remember how to do it. So here we are. Okay, this is maybe not the best example to start with. Here we go. So some pretty. I don't know how old I was here. Probably about 18. I want to say something like that, give or take. And I mean, I think it's probably just better to scan a few. These are just straight scans. I haven't worked this in any way. I haven't tried to retouch. You can see, you know, bits of dust. Somebody asked me about, oh, doesn't it take you ages to retouch? No, not if you clean the negatives. Anyway, that was for that. That was a different vlog. But let's just come through. You know, let's just go through here. People on a bus. Let's just sort of lightly go through. Obviously not the best images in the world. You know, some, you know, I'm not, I think when I saw these for the first time, I was not hugely discouraged, but I wasn't sort of jumping up and down about them. Far from it. People on a bus, people waiting for a bus. This is almost harping back to my previous vlog of waiting for Godot. These could be the protagonists, almost not waiting for a bus, but waiting for Godot. But anyway, you get the idea. 4 drunks, I guess, eventually culminating in one of them falling over. They look like they were, or they look as though they were going to topple at any point. And me, a young man, you know, the context is important. Me, a young man, trying to make sense of the world around me. And that's what was fascinating to me. It was trying to understand me, understand everybody else. Not with a view to sort of, you know, solving huge gaping questions that had occurred, but just getting a sense of what's it all about? Why do sort of older men in the middle of the day get drunk and fall over? I mean, what is that about? Why, you know, I'm just like this sort of naive kid, really, who's trying to, you know, what is this guy scowling at me? Is he crazy? What's going on? So, with that aside, don't forget, I'm at college here, so I keep going back. This isn't college work, this is self-initiated stuff. This is my antidote to college almost. So you can see at a glance, my exposures are a little off. They're a stop and a half, maybe at times 2 stops underexposed. You see these big globules of black. I mean, in this photograph, it doesn't matter so much. I've got a great exposure of the ceiling of the bus here with the old woman, but, and you can argue the same here, but you've got large amounts of black with no detail, just globules of, as I call them, globules of black. Again, it doesn't matter too much in some places. obviously, my shutter is way too slow as well. And you can see here that, a lot of the photographs are looking up. And so my feeling is, I'm trying to gather confidence. I'm trying to photograph people in a way where I won't be berated. I'm trying to understand what is acceptable, what isn't acceptable. I'm asking myself these questions, both from a moral point of view and and a technical point of view, I guess. Again, people at the bus stop, I'm looking up. They, one of them looks a little bit volatile, and you can see this section left-hand corner. Am I hiding behind something or hiding the camera behind something? I'm not sure what that is, but it appears in a couple of the images. So, am I erring on the side of caution here? What am I doing? Am I, I'm right up close and personal. I'm looking at these thinking, what were you thinking? You're too, and yet I felt very compelled to get the photograph. Very, very, I had to get these photographs. They were, just too good an opportunity, too much of a real piece of life, excuse me, to pass up on. I had to get them. But they're all to an extent underexposed. So I'm understanding a little bit of something here. I'm understanding maybe the developer I want to use. I'm understanding the film I want to use. But I'm just getting, in this one, you've just got no detail whatsoever in some of the black areas. It's just gone densely black. And I know these are straight scans, but I can tell that there's nothing to be recovered here. I'm exposing for, in this case, the guy's jacket, probably, and a bit of the sky, whereas I need to be pointing the camera down more towards the car or the tree here to to overexpose the film. Don't forget, always overexpose the film. Don't underexpose it. Do that with digital, but not with film. Unless you like that aesthetic. I don't. I'm learning that, I'm looking at, they're not sharp, so I'm probably, it doesn't look like a particularly bright day. It looks a bit one of those typical English cloudy days, overcast a little bit. And so I'm probably using the camera's meter, I'm guessing, and that's probably giving me a reading, based on what I'm pointing it at. Don't forget, light meters will probably do a very good job. You need to help them out. You need to do some exposure locking, point it at the right thing, and then exposure lock. If you just point it at anything, then it's just going to read that particular, that particular area within the frame that it'll lock onto. So, sometimes it's not so bad. In this one, it's probably not too bad. But what are we? We're probably on a standard lens, 50mm lens. This is probably roundabout distance to subject. So I'm thinking probably about f11, and I'm shooting at probably a 15th or a 30th of a second, something like that, give or take, and that's not fast enough. But again, I'm just hoping the camera will do that work for me, and that's where I'm falling foul. That's, I don't, as much as the stumbling about and the being drunk and kind of looking like you're going to fall over. you could argue, well, the movement maybe works a little bit with that subject matter, but that's just chance. That's just luck. That wasn't my intention. Okay, so it's about being honest, and it's about getting to a place where you are happy with an exposure, where you're happy with how frozen, or I'm not. I never say, oh, everything has to be absolutely frozen at all. Far from it sometimes, but when it isn't frozen, when I want a bit of a movement, I want that to be the intention, not not a consequence of me not a consequence of me not metering properly, a consequence of me just leaving it up to the camera and not even giving the camera a chance to meter correctly because I'm pointing it at the wrong thing. For example, I mean that's an okay exposure, but maybe here or in the bus, as I say, I should have just tipped the camera down, pointed it down a little bit to a sort of slightly darker area, whereas I've allowed the camera just to read off the guy's jacket and the sky, and it's given me, it's underexposed the film. And so this is the lesson I learned. The same here. These are all taken in a place called Moseley in Birmingham, central England, to people who are maybe looking from abroad or listening from abroad. The images themselves, they're not setting the world on fire. They're nothing to write home about. They're very much these are all, apart from the medium format ones taken at college, which I'll show you shortly. These are all from the same roll of film. And you can, it's a really good idea to sort of just have a look and see what you were doing back then. I can see that, whilst I'm going to college and learning stuff, I'm also reverting back. This is what my eye was taken by. This is what I was sort of passionate about, trying to get right, trying to, hold the camera straight, trying to choose a shutter that was a shutter speed that was fast enough or slow enough, and then trying to expose and get, I'm on record as saying I love my blacks, but I don't want them jet black. I don't want them with no detail in whatsoever, if I can possibly help it. And of course you have to bear in mind that you're shooting on the hoof here, so you've got to think quick, you've got to operate quick. Here, you can see I'm using a light meter. This is taken on a Hasselblad, and everything is just so. That's when I've got the time. This is a portrait, completely different situation. I can get everything right. Not so when I'm on the street. I've got to get everything right, but I've got to do it in a very rushed manner. And that's the trick. It's sort of half aesthetic and half technical ability, thinking quickly on your feet, to a point where it becomes almost automatic, where you're not really thinking about it. You are, but it's very quick. You can do it much more efficiently. And I would argue these street photographs, just going back to them, I'm not thinking. I'm letting the camera think for me. That's the brutal truth of it. I'm hoping that it'll get I've got to see the image. I'm waylaid by the image and trying to not be seen or be shouted at or have anybody be upset. I'm constant. The learning curve is huge. I'm really close up here, really close. So I'm also having to guess my distances, and because I'm not looking through the viewfinder here, presumably, Again, that's part of. I don't want her to see me, being a little bit apprehensive, being a little bit scared, and working out how I can do this without upsetting somebody, and working out what lens to use, because if I'm too far back and I'm on a wide lens, then there's too much space. All these things are going in, all these things are being worked out on a conscious and subconscious level, probably. That's why I use 50, because I can get to the right point without being too close. Or, nobody wants to see up somebody's nose. I mean, I'm using that as a metaphor. As long as you're not too far off, then it's, I would argue it's okay. But you see what's going on. I don't even mind. I don't even mind some of these compositions, even though I'm not looking through the camera. But they're not they're not how I would shoot if I were looking through the viewfinder. This one, particularly the guy on the bus, I don't mind at all. But that's more by luck. I'm not looking. You can tell I'm looking up. I'm not looking through the viewfinder. I'm being sneaky, in effect. The young man trying to work it all out, trying to work out what's acceptable to me and what's acceptable to other people. It's all a learning curve. This one, again, it's just a sort of. You can see I've metered off the sky, and everything else has gone too dark. Just being naive. This isn't any kind of a shot at all, but again, not. I look at this and think it's not a million miles off, but and I could probably recover quite a bit of that in the edit, but it's got the same characteristic. It's letting the camera meter for you, and that's not, you might get lucky from time to time and get an okay exposure, but not really, that's not the thing. This guy scowling between the scaffolding, it's not bad, but it's not right. I could probably tickle that, massage that a little bit, and it's a straight scan, so it's not, it's not a million miles off. It's not, but it's not right either. And the only way you get it right is by being honest with yourself. This one, me just kind of trying to work out the English. I don't know, this thing of, don't know. We're an eccentric bunch sometimes, and all this sort of queue waiting, and I don't know. And then again, I'm pointing up, aren't I? Completely different environment, but I'm pointing up again. This one I'm not. I'm actually straight on. Two people, woman buying her tea bags. But, yeah, I don't know. This looks like a longer lens to me. So maybe I'm further back. I did have a longer lens for a short while. Maybe I've got that on here, and maybe I feel safer doing that. Anyway, again, it's just about being honest. This is a college shot, sort of advertising shot, I suppose, of trying to appeal to the cool dudes. Again, I've got a light meter there. I can control the environment. I can control the lighting. I think you'd argue that the lighting isn't particularly brilliant, but it's, whatever lighting is there, I can control. And that was just an idea that I had to, sell a pair of shoes, believe it or not. And then we're back to the street again. Keep coming back to the street. Always coming back to the human condition. And look, I know that sounds a little bit grandiose or whatever, but it was a thing for me back. Well, I was going to say back then, but it is a thing for me now even. It just always has been. I think I spent the next 10 years after college trying to unlearn what I'd learned at college, because although, it was invaluable in many ways, it also, gave me all sorts of hang-ups about, what I should be doing and how I should be going about it. And these kind of shots, although they're not great, this isn't too bad, to be honest. It's metered off a sort of mid-toned lorry, in essence. So it's not bad. It's as I say, it's the antithesis of college, and it's I'm going by what I'm drawn to. And this is probably more important than anything else. To see what you're drawn to see what you're, I'm not setting up a tripod in a field and, taking photographs of flowers, for example. Nothing wrong with that if that's what you want to do. Nothing wrong at all. But that's not what's floating my boat. And so, after a while, I began to realize, that this is why I bought a camera in the first place, to shoot life, to shoot people, to shoot in essence, the human condition. This is a photograph. I mean, the framing is useless. It's not even reminiscent of how I would frame a photograph, but it harks back to the nursery I went to, which was a very multicultural. Mosey is a very multicultural place, and yet I found myself going to a Church of England, very white school afterwards, and I couldn't work out where all my friends had gone. The nursery and the primary school were a mile away. Where had they all gone? And so, again, I don't know how old I am, but I've got a bit of a bee in my bonnet about the fact that, I'm learning about racism. I'm learning about the fact that, you only go to this primary school if you're middle class or something, Balsall Heath is a place that was, I don't know about now. This is a while ago, as I say. These are 35 years old. I've no idea what Moseley is like now, and I've no idea what Balsall Heath are like. But back then, Moseley was a very multicultural place. Very rich people. You had artists, you had bohemians, you had BBC people. It was a real mix, and I loved it. Balsall Heath, 3/4 of a mile away, as you can see in the signpost, was predominantly a sort of Asian, Bangladeshi kind of place. And, why is my Church of England school... There were two coloured lads, both brothers, I should say, in this school, but... and that mother and father were GPs. Why is a CV school just taking, white middle class people predominantly? And it's, I'm at an early age here, but I'm learning these things. That there's some, I don't understand it particularly, but by now I am. By this age, 17, 18, 19, however old I am beginning to realise things are beginning to resonate, and this is a photograph that was, I think, on the that concerned itself with that, with this issue. Asian lad not turning to his left and going to Balsall Heath. White older bloke looking. I don't know if he is actually looking at the kid, looking aggressive. I don't know, but it was everything that I was feeling back then, even though the framing is not, not brilliant. But it this is the human condition. This is good and bad and indifferent. The eccentric, the funny, the weird, the wrong. And this is why I kept on going back to it. It's not writing the world or anything, but it's helping me understand it. It's it wasn't I wanted to shoot street. I couldn't do anything else. This is just what, as I say, I bought the camera for, to help me understand something about it, to help me, and you can see a little selfie going on here, and that was my first camera, the Super A, and that's with a long lens on, which harks back to that other photograph, which is why I wasn't, shooting up at an angle. I don't know what that is even. I had it for a short while, didn't like it, went back to my 50 and all, never looked back since. But yeah, I didn't mean to do that, but I've just realised. Anyway, another street photograph, again, Moseley, a down and out guy with a pot collecting money, but just waking up in the morning and doing some exercises. I'm shot at an angle here, and again, it's just all experimental, isn't it? It's all trying to work out what's what in the world, and you can see some attempts at fashion, which I did as an assistant for a while after college, and you see another studio photograph again, and this is a straight scan, which I did for this vlog. I could, although the black dress looks fairly dense, there is detail in there, so I could lift that and get a lot more. I mean, I don't dislike it, but I would ideally want some separation, a little bit of definition between her dress and her right shoulder or arm, and the shadow. But again, the framing is, that's how I would probably frame now, or the framing is just loose. I'm also learning about medium format and looking through a viewfinder of a medium format camera. It's all trial and error. It's all learning. This, I think, is my first ever photograph. I don't think I was aiming to shoot that, but I think my finger slipped or something, and whatever. But so the beginning of the first roll of film I shot. I've always sort of kept that as a little, I don't know. And then what else? Another two selfies on the tube in London, understanding something about that, and me, believe it or not, waiting for a girlfriend who was abroad at the time, and I think I sent her this photograph as a postcard or something. So you get the idea. All images that you can kind of, you think, not particularly great, but in all honesty, I mean, I get a little bit of something. These weren't hugely discouraging. They weren't making me think, all the time I'm thinking, can I do this? I think is the ultimate question, can I do this? And I think most of the time there was something that made me think, yeah, possibly. Yeah, I can fix that. I can mend that. I can I can improve upon that. Um, and I think it was a really important exercise. And I'm sort of, and that's really why I'm talking about it now. I think that if you can bear to look at some of your old work and see a natural progression, a natural line, you can learn a lot from it. You can see the things that you were doing wrong. Have you sorted that out? Have you improved? Have you progressed in a certain area? Um, there are so many questions you can ask and learn from if you're honest, if you're really brutally honest with yourself. Yes, I can pick out all sorts of faults with any one of these, but you know, it's also interesting just to see what you were doing, see what your eye was, see how you were thinking back then, what the kind of things you were photographing, how you were trying to do it, and yeah, as I say, the mistakes you were making. Um, we tend to sort of bury our mistakes and pretend they didn't happen, and or wince if we see them, but actually, you can derive, I think, an awful lot of knowledge and an awful lot of. I mean, for me, I've sort of gone way past that. These, as I say, these are 35 years old, but at the time, I had to sort of put on a pragmatic hat, if you like, separate myself from what I was trying to do, and the failure, and the whether it worked, and just see them for what they were, almost as though I was critiquing somebody else's work. Separate myself, remove myself from, and just be totally honest and straight. And I think if you can do that, I'm not saying it's easy, far from it, but I think if you can do that, then you're going to progress. You're going to learn an awful lot, and probably derive an awful lot more, or not derive more. Can't think of the word now, but not more pleasure, but eliminate more angst, if that makes sense, and make it a little bit more of a kind of less fraught. I'm just yeah. So I'm just reading a few notes I was going to mention here, but I think that's probably enough. I don't want to confuse issues. So yeah, hopefully that was helpful in some way. Maybe maybe get your old contact sheets out, or look at your old digital files, and I don't know if you've got them in chronological order, or what have you, but yeah, have a little look and see how far you've come. Maybe, no harm in that, is there? Okay, I think that'll do it. If you've got any thoughts, things that you want me to talk about, that's great. I'm more than happy to give my 2 pennies worth. I won't sort of, I'll answer them in the best way I can, or if you've got subject matters you want me to talk about, that's cool as well. Yeah, thanks for stopping by. See you for the next one. Cheers for now.